Hey guys, MCU Collector here, and I have another video. This one's actually going to be a spoiler review of the movie. Now, I don't normally do reviews, so it's not going to be too structured. I have my computer on here. I took some notes. I'm going to constantly be looking over to see what I want to talk about because I don't want to miss anything that we went over in the movie. So the reason why I'm doing the review now is because I actually saw it for a second time. I went to the theater, I saw it again, loved it again. And I'm actually going to be seeing it tomorrow morning with my brother, my sister-in-law, my nieces, and actually my dad. And he's all excited about it. He called me and said, "Did you see Endgame yet?" I'm like, "Come on, Pop. You know I saw it the Thursday night premiere. Come on." And he told me, a buddy of his at work saw it and was talking about it. He said, "Don't tell me anything. Don't spoil it for me. I want to go and surprise." I'm thinking, you know, you've only seen like 5 MCU movies, right? He just watched Infinity War for the first time like a month ago. I actually got him and my mom to watch it at the same time. My mom actually came to visit before we actually headed out to Korea. She wanted to spend time with my kids before she went out. So we actually had them watch Infinity War. So that's why he wanted to watch Endgame. So he's like, "Don't spoil it for me." I'm like, "Come on, you don't know what's going to be going on in this movie." But anyway, I digress. So spoilers, spoiler warning, okay? So if you haven't seen the movie yet, please leave the video. Do not watch this video. I will be talking about spoilers. Thumbnail says spoilers, title's gonna say spoilers. Spoilers. I'm gonna go over a lot of things about this movie. And we'll have kind of a discussion. Talk to me in the comments down below and tell me what you guys thought. What are some of the thoughts on these certain things? How did you feel about them? Any questions that I might have, if you have a potential answer. Or anything like that. I do want to have an open discussion about that. So spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. We'll get right to it. So the movie, man, the way the movie opened, and we knew this was going to happen. We knew Hawkeye's family, his daughter gone, his son's gone, his wife gone. That's how the movie started. Right away, straight to it, gone. And then the movie cuts out and we see the Avengers, you know, or actually we see Tony and Nebula, and they're going through and they did some stuff, but again, they're kind of stranded out there. So it's 3 weeks after the events of Infinity War. So there's a couple of things. So in Captain Marvel, if you saw Captain Marvel, the end credit scene was the pager that they got from Nick Fury. It turns off because Captain Marvel, she's arrived. So that end credit scene's important. Captain America still has his beard. So that's when that happens. So they've already met Captain Marvel. Now we cut to Tony and Nebula, and Captain Marvel is the one that saves them, rescues them. There's a lot of fan theories on that. Turned out they were right. So here's what I think of that. I think she had already talked to the Avengers and said, "Hey, you know what? We need to try and see who's out there." And I think Captain Marvel went on a mission to try and see who was out there or if they were still alive or anything like that. That's how I believe that worked out, in case anybody was wondering. But then they go on a mission. They're like, "Okay, let's go get Thanos. We'll get the stones." I did not see this coming. There's no way to know. I didn't think so. I assumed that they would go to Thanos, something would happen, they would fail again, and they kind of sort of failed only because the stones were gone. Thanos got rid of them, and then Thor does what he didn't do. He went for the head, and he cut off Thanos' head. Now, one thing I love how it played out, and I think it was important that that happened, but I thought Disney kind of had a rule there was to be no beheadings in their movies. I thought that was an actual thing, and yet Thanos had his head chopped off. That's cool, but I thought it was a rule that they didn't do. Anyway, and then we jump to 5 years later and everything's gone to crap, right? One thing that was interesting, Joe Russo has another cameo. He has a cameo in all the movies that they direct. He was in Infinity War. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if he was in Infinity War. Let me know down in the comments below. Was Joe Russo in Infinity War? You know, he was the doctor in the Winter Soldier that took care of Nick Fury. He was supposed to be the psychologist that was supposed to talk to Bucky, but Baron Zemo killed him. And now I can't think about it in Infinity War. I'm sure he was in there. Let me know. But Joe Russo was in it, and I'm sure, I don't know the reasoning behind this, but he played a gay character. Now that's probably In looking at the MCU, besides TV, we're not going to go into TV, but in the MCU, how many openly gay characters have we had? I think that was it. I think he's kind of the first one to openly be gay and talk about it. Not that he was a main character in any way, but it was definitely there. Another thing I actually forgot, before we did the 5-year jump, it showed all the people that were snapped away. And interestingly enough, Sharon Carter was among those pictures of people that were snapped away. Just thought that was a little bit interesting. And then Scott Lang gets out of the quantum realm by a rat. Okay, that's just how it happened. All right, whatever. But then we get to a lot of the emotional things, and Scott Lang finding out what happened. You know, everyone thought he had the Hank Pym's lab. He was just pulling a wagon of his stuff. But when he was searching the memorial to find Cassie's name, and he didn't find Cassie's name, he found his own. That was pretty crazy. And the reunion that he had with Cassie, that was some emotional stuff. You know, I'm a grown ass man, so I didn't cry, but you know, I'm not gonna lie, it was tough. Right, it was extremely emotional. Being a father, I can't imagine. So it hits you in the gut. It does. It really does. So that was, I think, an awesome moment to see on screen, and very, very sad. Next, we go with Scott going to the Avengers base. And one thing that is key kind of throughout this movie is that Black Widow is very broken. Thor is very broken. But Black Widow, you see it in her emotions, you see it in her facial expressions. Right from the beginning, when Thor cut off Thanos' head, the look on her face, she was just hopeless, lost, didn't know what to do. And then 5 years later, she's the same. She's broken. She's crying from nothing. She's absolutely broken. And that's going to be key and something that's going to be coming up later in the movie. Which is very important to it, and I want to talk about it. Then we see, Tony, Pepper, and Morgan, they have their daughter. So in Infinity War, when Tony's talking about this dream that he had, it did come true. So in his 5 years, Tony did move on, and he didn't want that to change. He didn't want to lose his daughter, and rightfully so. But he does come around and he helps the Avengers to do the time travel thing. So they aren't really quantum suits, they kind of are, but they're time travel suits. So it specifically says time travel suit in the movie. I think Rhodey says it to Ant-Man as he's testing, and he ends up using one of the Pym particles, of course. Then we kind of cut through and we get all the team together. You got Fat Thor. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I didn't like Fat Thor. It provided great comedy. I laughed at all of it, but I didn't like Fat Thor that much. I loved him. He was my favorite in Infinity War. He was my least favorite in Endgame. He wasn't terrible. I'll make that a point. Not terrible, just not my favorite. My least favorite. Ronan, that scene was awesome. Hawkeye's kind of a badass, right? Jeremy Renner. All of his scenes were absolutely incredible. The emotions in all of them, and I think he was really strongly highlighted in this movie, and I really liked that we got to see that from Hawkeye. The Battle of New York stuff was awesome. Getting that call back all the way back to the Avengers is really cool. Seeing some of the stuff, what happens after they had Loki down on the floor. Well, they just kind of leave the tower. Some awesome things. They tell Hulk, can't go on the elevator, take the stairs. He didn't like that. But you see the strike team, they're the ones that come and take the scepter. Now, the awesome part about that is Captain America met up with them, and you see, hey, we're going to have an elevator scene. And it's the exact strike team that was in the Winter Soldier. So those same people, the same Hydra guys, like Rumlow and the other guys, I don't know their names, same people. So were we going to get another elevator fight scene? I thought we were at first, but then to Sitwell, Jasper Sitwell, he shows up again. He says, "Hail Hydra," and they're just kind of like, "Oh!" And it was a pretty awesome moment. We get another cameo from Robert Redford, which was awesome. This is the part where Loki was. So the interesting thing is Loki gets the Tesseract and he leaves. So we'll discuss that later, because does that affect their timeline? It shouldn't, but I'm going to talk about why it could in a little bit. But they fail, can't get the Tesseract. Hulk, hits Tony and they lose it and all this and that, and it just gets all crazy. So, The Avengers stuff, that was awesome. We got to see the Battle of New York in 2012. We got to see that the Ancient One, she was there kind of fending off some of the Chitauri. That was pretty awesome to see. So cameo by Tilda Swinton's Ancient One. Really like that. So lots of cameos and callbacks to all the previous MCU movies. So I think that's why you had to, in Endgame, it's probably not extremely necessary, but for you to have followed all the MCU films up until this point, it would make more sense. So I think my dad's gonna have some problems watching the movie tomorrow, but we shall see. One of the big things in all these as they're moving through time, this was one of the standout moments for me, and it's so small, it's not even a big deal, but Tony and Steve traveling to 1970, and Tony's talking to Howard. The thing that happened, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet. Jarvis was there. He's the butler, the driver to Howard Stark, to the Stark family. Jarvis. If you don't know, Jarvis started in Agent Carter. Jarvis is a TV character. No TV character from the MCU, any of the Marvel shows, has been into the movies. Movie characters and actors have gone on to TV, but no TV actor has gone into a movie, and Jarvis is the only one to have done that. And I think this was a big deal, at least for me. It was very exciting. I don't think there's any, I don't think it means anything in the overall scheme of things, but how cool was that to finally see a Marvel TV show character on the big screen in a Marvel movie, Jarvis. Because Jarvis was awesome in Agent Carter. If you've seen Agent Carter, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Agent Carter, I recommend that you check it out. Second season, First season was great. It really was. So that was very, very cool, and one of my favorite moments of the film, believe it or not. We see Asgard, so Thor and Rocket go to Asgard. We see Jane Foster, so Natalie Portman. And what I want to do, I want to go back and watch Thor: The Dark World, because did they reuse footage from Thor: The Dark World, or was Natalie Portman actually on set for this movie? Because remember, she didn't want to be in any more Marvel movies because the whole thing that happened with Patty Jenkins no longer directing Thor: The Dark World. So I'm very curious about that. I'm going to go back in Thor: The Dark World to see if they just used footage and then, superimposed Rocket in there. That'll be interesting. Rene Russo's Frigga, she was back in it and talking to Thor. I think that was an awesome scene. And Thor takes Mjolnir, which was cool. And it's funny because I was thinking, well, if he took Mjolnir, Mjolnir's gone. That's going to throw off that timeline and create an alternate timeline where everybody's screwed because Thor won't have Mjolnir. But then at the end, he's bringing Mjolnir back so he could take it back, and along with putting things away, putting the Infinity Stones away. So, okay, that makes sense. We see Morag, so it's funny watching Star-Lord, Peter Quill, singing and dancing, and then, but, we're listening to the music in the movie, but then when you just hear him singing along, that was pretty funny. The whole two nebulas thing and the grand plan of Thanos to go into the future was insane. Did not see that coming. I had no idea that that's how it was going to happen. Every time we see Thanos in the trailers, I'm thinking, okay, it's Thanos. But, the regular timeline Thanos, he got his head chopped off. So that was pretty crazy. And it makes me think, the Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure, Thanos, the armored Thanos, has the gauntlet on his hand, and that's not accurate. And I hate when they do that, but I get, they couldn't spoil that for us, right? Vormir, the whole entire Vormir scene was crazy. Red Skull, Black Widow, Hawkeye. I thought it was funny that, Red Skull says Black Widow's father's name is Ivan. And then later she's like, I didn't even know that. And that was another extremely emotional moment to see the two of them fighting to be the sacrifice to get the Soul Stone. And it was powerful, and it's not, I didn't see that coming. I should have, but I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that Black Widow would be the one to go, and I think it makes sense in the overall story because, again, she was very broken in this movie. Hawkeye is the most important person in her life, her best friend. She's wearing the arrow necklace throughout the movie. You see that especially when she goes to meet up with Tony and try and talk to him into helping them out as far as the time travel stuff. She has that necklace. So it was It was very sad, very very emotional moment. Yeah, wow, yeah, just crazy. The Hulk snap. So they get all the Infinity Stones, they go back, and Hulk does the snap. That was awesome. Then everything that happens after that was just insane. We first see Scott, he sees birds, so he's like, okay, I think it worked. And then Hawkeye gets the phone call from Laura, his wife. The look on his face. Oh, Jeremy Renner, awesome actor. He actually he's from Modesto, California, where I live. Isn't that crazy? Crazy. Also George Lucas, too. I don't know if you guys know that. Then the Thanos attack, that whole entire battle scene. I'm not even going to go into the specifics of the battle scene, but it was amazing. There's some key things that I want to talk about were just incredible. For one, the visuals and the wide shots of everything. Thanos with his army behind him. Steve with everybody behind him. You see Giant Man in the background, everything. The best part, though, was the setup to it. You know, all of a sudden, Steve, he's facing Thanos and his army by himself. And then Sam's like, hey, Cap, can you hear me? On your left. And then over here behind his left, you see Sling Ring, portal opening, and all the heroes and everybody comes back. And it's just like, wow. That was an absolutely incredible moment. Crazy shenanigans with fighting. Best part is where Giant Man just comes in and punches one of the Leviathans out of the sky. All kinds of crazy things happen. Captain Marvel was cool. I liked the A-Force moment. I know a lot of people didn't like it. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel organic. It felt kind of pushed together. I didn't mind it at all, and I'll tell you what it's all about. I watched that movie. My 11-year-old daughter was next to me that first night, and the look on her face when that moment happened, that's what it's all about. It was just, I looked over at her, and she was just so excited. And that was enough for me. I thought it was awesome. Tony does the snap, and then that's where the waterworks come. I didn't cry. A lot of people in the theater cried at this moment. It's extremely emotional. Tony makes the ultimate sacrifice for everyone. And before he dies, it's fitting that you see War Machine, you see Iron Spider, and you see Rescue all there as he's taking his last few breaths. So you have 4 of them basically all in their armors from Tony Stark, from Iron Man. And one of the things Pepper says is, you can rest now. And that's a callback to earlier in the movie after Tony figures out the time travel thing. And he says, I could throw it in the lockbox and throw it in the lake. And she says, yeah, but when will you rest? And then now she says, you can rest now. It's just like, oh, you know, all the MCU, everything. We owe it to Iron Man, to Robert Downey Jr. He started this. And I think it was a very fitting end for the character and for him in the MCU. Which brings me to the ending. So we see the funeral. We see all these characters. Everyone's there. There's no Gamora. So the past Gamora is there. She's somewhere. I don't think she got snapped. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will follow their journey to try and find her and how that character develops. Do her and Star-Lord become an item again? Who knows? But the big thing that I want to talk about, 2 things. So when they went back in the Battle of New York, Loki got the Space Stone and he left. So that alters the timeline. And it shouldn't matter because Bruce and Nebula were talking about the rules of time travel. It's clear in the MCU that if you travel in the past and do something, there is no butterfly effect. So you can't change your timeline because it's already happened. So going back in the past doesn't actually affect your timeline. It would create a new timeline. So understand, that's very important. So it creates a new timeline. So Loki taking the Space Stone and leaving. That should create a new timeline where all the events of the MCU basically wouldn't happen because the Tesseract is then gone. Who knows what would happen after that point. So I don't think Loki is alive. I think Loki is still dead in the MCU timeline. But in an alternate timeline, he's probably still alive. So Steve is tasked with taking Mjolnir, taking the Infinity Stones, and returning them to the rightful place to make sure that these alternate timelines don't get created and there aren't problems for everyone else in these new timelines. So he doesn't come back, and he goes to live his life. He goes with Peggy Carter. Beautiful conclusion to Steve Rogers, the character, Captain America. I love the way they ended it. But, plot hole, if you go back in time and change the events of the past, it does not have any effect on your current timeline. So how was Steve, an old man, to have lived through all these events of the MCU this entire time to the point where we actually had 2 Captain Americas, 2 Steve Rogers? How was he able to do that, live, and be at that moment to pass off the mantle of Captain America to Sam Wilson, to Falcon? That is a huge plot hole in my opinion. Am I overthinking it? Probably, because you won't want to take away from the moment itself and how beautifully done it was. So I hate to do that, but in the rules that they have defined for time travel in the MCU, Steve should not have been there. He should not have. And on top of that, where did he get the shield? Remember, the shield was damaged in the fight with Thanos. He didn't take it with him going back in time. Wherever he was, I'm sure it was at a point where Captain America was already frozen, unless he just creates a completely new timeline somehow and he gets the shield. We don't really know. And it's probably one of those things where I'm overthinking it and they just want you to have the suspension of disbelief and just go with it. But I mean, there's some plot holes when you really want to think about it and have the discussion and say, well, how did that happen? Because it's not explained, and I don't know how they would explain it, and it's just, I can't help but think about that. But that was everything. So overall, the movie was absolutely fantastic. Second time around, still loved it just as much as the first. I got to see a couple of other things. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about. So Infinity War did not address the fact that Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive were married. Didn't touch nothing about that. So when the snap happened and Thanos was there and, you know, he gets snapped away and he sees Ebony Maw get snapped away. If you look in that background, because in that battle, you got to see Ebony Maw fight. You got to see Corvus Glaive a little bit. He gets killed pretty early on by Okoye. Cole Obsidian gets smashed by Giant Man, stepped on. And then you don't see Proxima Midnight at all. But in the background, she was there. She was holding Corvus Glaive as they snapped away. So I was like, okay, well, there she is. I thought that was pretty cool because then it kind of shows that, hey, you know, they were married, they were a couple, that she was embracing him as they snapped away. Which is weird because even the dead snapped away. But I guess it's a different snap, right? So it's not just about living creatures. But a very good movie. So I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts? You know, what did you think of the movie? Did you have any problems with it? Or is there anything that you guys want to discuss, want to talk about? Get it going down in the comments below and we'll have a discussion about it because I am very curious. I know at this point now this is probably an over a 20-minute video and I don't know if you guys want to watch it all or anything, but I had to talk about it and get out all my feelings and what I had seen in the movie and all the emotions and everything because I want to talk about it. I'm curious to know what you guys think. The questions that I bring up. How was Steve there? Where did the shield come from? Is Loki really out there? You know, if Steve's there, then I guess technically Loki could be. I don't know. Let's talk about it. But there you go. Still a fantastic movie. I'm going to see it for a third time in 3 days. You know, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning. Will I see it Sunday? Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to see it again. I would like to see it in IMAX one of these times. So, yeah, just an absolutely great movie. If you guys saw my thoughts before, a true tribute to the entire MCU. When I think of Easter eggs, I think this entire movie was an Easter egg to the MCU itself. You know, all the callbacks to the previous movies and everything. One thing that was a little unfortunate, there was no Stan Lee tribute at the beginning like Captain Marvel had. And I actually did not care for the Stan Lee cameo in this movie. It was still great to see him, but because it was his last, I would have liked something different, but nobody knew it was going to be his last, unfortunately. So there it is. Those were all my thoughts, all the key things that I wanted to talk about, all the emotional moments of the movie. Wow. Wow. There it is, guys. Thanks. If you guys have followed me throughout the entirety of this movie, thanks for watching. Because I know I ramble on, but I had to just talk about it. But thanks, guys.